That's why people read books. If you study law, for example, there are all different types of law. So you can study commercial law and financial law and civil law. As soon as you study criminal law, you go, wow, this is quite very interesting, because you're talking about crime. You're talking about, you know, something that you're reading books. So it was extremely interesting. So that's how I ended up doing criminal psychology. It wasn't my choice from when I was a kid. It's just that as I did the general year in university, I was like, this is very interesting. So I carried on. That's how it turned out.
Is there such a thing as a criminal mind? Or are they really just a bunch of losers?
There are criminal minds. A lot of crimes, I mean, what people don't realize that a lot of crimes, these crimes that you read in books, a very, very intelligent killer, or they don't really exist. Crimes are directly related to stupidity. I always say that. It's people that I was explaining this, for example, people who have a better life or been to university or are more educated, they can argue an argument. They don't have to fight, right? But people who don't have a lot of education, people who are like, every time they get nervous, they don't know how to act. And instead of having a conversation and trying to sort it out, no, they go physical straight away. In America, that happens a lot. So if you have an argument with a doctor, the doctor is not going to punch you in the face. Now you go and you have an argument with somebody who hasn't gone to school, stays on the streets all day, and as soon as he loses his mind, he punches you or he takes a knife and kills you. So, but there are certain things as criminal minds. There are people that can't help it. Psychopaths, for example, some people hear voices, they say they hear voices. They really do. In their minds, they really do hear voices. Some people think that they are talking to God and they want to kill. And some people are just sadists. They gain something out of the murder. They gain something out of being very violent. A lot of the times, unfortunately, it is related to a sexual excitement. They get aroused sexually by being very violent, by killing people, by seeing blood, by the violence. So there is such a thing as a criminal mind, yes, but most of the crimes we see every day is not really out of a criminal mind.
There's a criminal mind, but not necessarily the criminal mastermind.
Exactly.
That we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's more in literature. And talking about literature, that's after all what we're here for. When did you turn to writing and why? Was it a dream from the beginning, or?
No, it wasn't. Yeah, I was explaining this yesterday. I never wanted to be a writer. There was never a point in my entire life that I was like, oh, I'm gonna write a book. I never thought about stories. I didn't want to come up with characters. It just wasn't something that I was thinking about. And then one day, in 2007, I think, I just had a dream. I had a dream about a story. I just came up with this idea, and I woke up and I told my girlfriend at the time, I said, I had a dream about a story. She goes, oh really, tell me. So I told her the story, and she said, it's very good, you should write it. And I was like, okay, so I did. That's the problem with a lot of writers. They have an idea for a story, but they never sit down and write it. I did. The next day, I was like, I'm going to write it. So I sat down and started writing the first chapter of this story. And I'll explain, it's got nothing to do with crime. It was a complete crazy story about, I don't even remember what it was about. But it wasn't crime. And then as I was writing, I thought, you know, if one day I would write a book, I always thought, I would have to write crime because I know crime, because I study crime, I work with criminals, I work with the police. So I could probably think of a crime story a lot better than I could think about this other story. And I was like, so here I am, writing my first chapter, and it's not crime. So I was like, that's crazy. So I finished that chapter and wrote a different chapter in a crime story. Just came up with a crime story. I was like, I'm going to write a chapter in a crime story. So I came up with an opening, which became The Crucifix Killer, which was my first book. So I wrote them both and gave both to my girlfriend and said, okay, read it. And she doesn't read crime books. But when she read it, she was like, okay, the crime one is more exciting. And I was like, of course it is. So then I carried on writing. I wrote chapter 2 and 3, gave it back to her, she read it, and she said, I really like it. Then I gave it to a friend, and my friend said, I really like it. But you know, friends and girlfriends and everything, they're not gonna say, no, it's horrible, go home. So I didn't know. I was like, okay, tell me the truth, because to write a book, it takes a year. It's like, please, don't let me spend a year of my life doing something that I am bad, just because you want to be nice. So tell me the truth. And they said, no, it's really good and everything. I was like, okay, I didn't believe him. So what I did is, like, I had an account with AOL. And back then, we didn't have Facebook, there's no Twitter. So I did a search on AOL for people who were from AOL that like to read. That on their hobbies, they said, I read a lot and I love to read. So I sent them an email from people I've had no idea. People in Canada, people in Australia, people in New Zealand, people in England, people in America. Somebody just killed somebody over there. I sent an email to all these people that I had no idea. And I said, look, you don't know who I am, but I read on your profile that you like to read. So I was wondering, would you read my first 3 chapters? I'm trying to write my first crime novel, and tell me your truthful opinion, because my friends say it's good, but you don't know me. So you can tell me, look, it's horrible, you suck, go sell pizzas or something, don't do this. And they said, a lot of people said, yeah, sure, send me the chapter. So I did. I emailed the chapter all over the world, the first 3 chapters. And everybody, I think it was 26 people, they all emailed back and they said, I like it. I think you carry on. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm gonna carry on writing, because I didn't really believe my girlfriend and I didn't really believe my friend. So that's how it started. I never really thought about being a crime writer or being a writer of any sort. It just started from there, and then I wrote the whole book and got lucky. That's my first time got lucky. I got an agent, and the agent got me a book deal, and here I am, talking to everybody.
Is there, to you, a connection between music and writing? Do you feel that when you write that there's some music going on?
Well, I listen to music when I write. I mean, music is a big part of my life, but I think music is a big part of everybody's life. I don't think anybody doesn't like music, because the thing about music for me, when I was in music, I always thought music has a certain power that nothing else has. Right? For example, you can listen to 10 seconds of a song and your mind goes bang, back 20 years ago. You remember something when you were in school, or you remember something. It has the power to completely, bring back memories. It has the power to make you cry. It has the power to make you laugh within 20 seconds. To me, so it's the most powerful thing that you can have. You can listen to a song and that song reminds you of your mother, and then you cry, or it reminds you of a good time, or it reminds you of a very bad night that you had, or something like that. So music's always been a very big part of my life. But yeah, there's similarities in both industries, the writing industry, the publishing industry, and the music industry. But yeah, for me, music is always there. Everywhere I travel, I bring my little player. It's one of the things I do.
And there's a connection. I mean, the process of playing and the process of writing, that's what
there is. I mean, they're very similar. Obviously, the difference is that you can write a song in one day. You can write 10 songs in one day for good. You can't write a book in one day. So, but the process it's similar. Some people do write songs with more than one. There's like 2 or 3 get together to write a song. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities in the way I worked, because when I was in a band, I used to write all the songs in the band. Maybe that's why I never got signed. But I used to write all the songs in the band. So yeah, it's very similar. Obviously, writing a book takes a lot longer, but there's quite a big similarity in the way I used to work with music and the way I work with writing. Yeah.
Could you expand on how do you write? How do you go about writing?
Okay.
To be a musician, you have to be disciplined. You have to practice.
Yeah.
How do you write?
I am a very disciplined guy. I mean, it's just the way he works. I think every writer has a way that works for him. I know writers that can only write at night. They don't write in the day. They get up in the middle of the afternoon. They start writing at 10 o'clock at night and write all the way until 5 o'clock in the morning. They go to bed. I know writers that, for example, Jeffrey Archer from England, when he's writing a book, he gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he writes for 2 hours, takes a break for 2 hours, and then writes so he writes from 4 o'clock to 6, then takes a break from 6 to 8, writes from 8 to 10, takes a break from 10 to 12, writes from 12 to 2, takes a break from 2 to 4, writes from 4 to 6, go to bed. That's what he does for 3 months straight, nothing else, and then the book is finished in 3 months. I can't do that. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to write? No, thank you very much. So everybody has a process that works for them. The way I work, I treat it like a job. I treat it like an office job. I get up very early, I get up at 6, then I go to the gym, I train, I come back home, and then I write pretty much the whole day. I take breaks for lunch and everything, but I write the whole day until about 4, 5, 6 o'clock sometimes, and then that's it. I stop. I close the door, and I don't do anymore. I don't think about it at night. On the weekends, I never work. On the weekends, I go out and I go to clubs, I party, I do whatever, but I don't work during the weekends. So I treat it like if it was a job. I treat it like if it was a regular job. Some people don't do that. Some people, I know writers that write at any time. You know, they write until 11 at night, they write over the weekend, they write on Sundays, they write on bank holidays, they write anytime. During Christmas, they don't care. I don't. So every writer has a process that works for them. That's the way it works for me. I know that Stephen King wrote a book called On Writing, which he tells everybody how he writes, his process of writing. And it became, to a lot of writers, it became like a Bible. People write it, and because it's Stephen King, obviously one of the biggest writers there are, they think, oh, this is the way you're supposed to write a book, because this is the experience of a master like Stephen King. But if you want to try it, if you're a writer and you want to try Stephen King's way, please feel free. But whatever works for Stephen King doesn't necessarily work for everybody else. You know, that's the way he writes. Find your way. As I said, some people write at night, some people write naked, some people write in a cafe. They can take their laptops to a cafe and write in a cafe. Some people write in a park, some people write in a small room. So everybody's got their own process. My process is that I have a little room in my house, I get up, I sit there, I write all day, and I go to bed. Pretty much that's what I do. So that's my process of writing out.
Do you need to isolate yourself? Do you turn off the internet?
No, I don't. Because I research a lot during the process of writing, all the time. So I check a lot of things on the internet, so no. And noise doesn't bother me. I can have music playing, I can have the television on. What I can do is have people walking about, so that's why I can't go to a cafe. A lot of people can go to a cafe and sit in a cafe, put their computer there, and write all day sitting in a Starbucks. I can't do that, because people walking about past me just freaks me out. Plus, I'm very strange when I write. I walk about a lot, and I act out. For example, if I'm gonna write a scene that somebody gets hit in the head or shot, and he falls on the ground, I actually stand up and I fall on the floor, because I want to see the position you're gonna fall. So if I do that in a cafe, it's gonna look a little strange. It's like, hey, hi everybody, just get up and fall on the floor. So I do that, and I act my dialogues as well. Because obviously, when you're a writer, I always tell people, you have to be a little bit schizophrenic, because you have to think of the dialogue of everybody. So if you're doing a dialogue between a guy and a woman, you have to write the guy's part, and then you have to write the woman's part. So you have to think like them, and then you have to write the killer, and then you have to write the victim, and then you have to write the detective, you have to write the captain, you have to write everybody. So in a way, your mind's got to be a little bit crazy, because you got to imagine all these people. So sometimes I act out my dialogues with myself, so I look crazy. So I couldn't do it in a cafe. But yeah, so I isolate myself as in people, but the sounds and internet and music, no, that doesn't bother me at all.
Obviously, you met a lot of bad guys, if you will, in reality.
Yeah.
And is it hard to separate? Do you try to separate, or do you just say, I remember this guy, this serial killer, or this wife beater, or whatever. I could do a story about him with a few changes. Is that how it goes?
Yeah. It would be very easy to do that. It would be very easy for you to, for me to use some of the experiences I went through. I really try not to. Obviously, there's a lot of things that I've seen that I reuse in the books, but it's not exactly identical. All the books, as I said, I got 5 books out at the moment, and all 5, the crimes are fictitious. They are imaginary, they don't exist. But on book 6, which is the book I'm just about to finish writing, which is going to come out next year, that is the first book that's actually based on real things that happen. Different, not one major real event, but different real events that I just put everything inside a story. So you have to be disciplined to separate. You can very easily use it, but as a criminal the problem with criminal psychology as well is that it's a very secret kind of thing. You don't really, you have an oath as well that you're not supposed, it's like being a psychology. You can't have a session with a patient and then as soon as the patient go away, you go and you tell other people the patient's problem. You can't do that. And criminal psychology is the same thing. When you study criminals and you talk to criminals and you interview criminals, you're not really supposed to go around writing books about those people. So I try not to do that. The new book is nothing that nobody that I interviewed. It's just events that happened while I was working as a criminal psychologist and everything. But it's very easy for as you say, for you to mix and put them both. I didn't. All my 5 books are fictitious, pretty much.
Yeah, which brings us to the term serial killer, because it appears that there are many more serial killers in literature than in real life. Or not.
Or not.
You should know.
Or not. There's a research by the FBI that says that only in America, at any one time, there are at least 500 serial killers loose. And the reason for that is because they're really not caught. And let me give you the explanation. According to the FBI, the definition of a serial killer is a killer who kills 3 or more people in 3 or more separate events, with a cooling off period in the center, right? So they kill somebody, then they take a break, and that break could be 1 day, a month, a year, 10 years, doesn't matter. Then he kills again, separate events, and then he kills again in a separate event. So if he does 3 kills, that's a serial killer, right? And the big difference between a serial killer and a mass murderer is somebody who kills 3 or more people in one event, right? For example, in America, the people that go into a school and they machine gun 20 students, okay, that's a mass murderer, that's not a serial killer. So that's problem number 1. For somebody to become a serial killer, they already have to have 3 murders, right? So by the time the FBI goes, we are dealing with a serial killer, this person has already killed 3 people or more. So it's already a problem right there. Okay, this guy has already been out acting for 3. And sometimes they don't link, right? Because people might think it's easy to link, but it's not that easy. Sometimes there's no signature. Sometimes the killer kills differently. The way people link is like, it has to be the same sort of kill. Like, for example, he uses a knife to kill somebody, right? So they analyze the cut, and they can tell if the knife was very sharp, the knife was blunt. They can analyze if the cut came from left to right, from up to bottom, and everything, right? But let's say the killer kills 2 people with the same stroke, and then on the 3rd one, instead of doing this, he kills it like this, right? When they analyze it, they go, it's not the same person, because the way he kills is differently. But it is the same person. So sometimes it will take forever for somebody to realize that this person is a serial killer. He's killing the same people all around. So people think there are not that many serial killers out there. There are not that many smart serial killers. The serial killers you see in films, like Hannibal Lecter, they're not out there. But there are a lot of people that been killing for many years in America, and pretty much around the world. Russia is great for serial killers. They have some amazing serial killers in Russia. So much so that, I mean, America got a lot of crazy people, but Russia got better. There's a serial killer in Russia who was named the chessboard killer. And he was called the chessboard killer because his idea was he wanted to kill as many people as there are squares on a chessboard, which is 64. And he got caught. And when they asked him why did he want to kill 64 people, and I kid you not, right? His reply was he wanted to be the record, because the record in Russia was from Andrei Chikatilo, and he killed 53 people. And the reason why this guy became a serial killer is just because he wanted to beat the record. He wanted to be bigger. Now, can you imagine this? This is somebody that decided to kill people just because he wanted to be the record. And when he got caught, he said he had killed 58 people, but the police didn't find 58. The police only found 52, which was one less than Chikatilo. This guy went crazy. He went mental in the box when they say, oh no, we only find 52. He lost his mind. This is in the court of law, right? They were sitting inside the court. He was like, no, I killed 50. He just got crazy because he wanted to be the record. And even though he didn't do 64, he thought in his head, I killed 56. The police said, no, you didn't, you killed 52. So he got very upset and very angry. I mean, that's crazy to me. So Russia has a different side of serial killing. But yeah, there are a lot more serial killers out there than there are people believe there are.
Okay, but speaking of interesting serial killers, maybe you should just introduce the two different serial killers that appears in your books here, the Death Sculpture and One by One.
Okay, the Death Sculpture, which is this, which I can't pronounce at all. Okay, that's the one. Yeah, that's the idea for that one was I wanted to do something a bit out there. I think all my books are out there, but yeah, this is a killer that I don't really. If you haven't read the book, I don't want to really give a lot away. But basically, he dismembers his victims, and he uses the dismembered parts of the victim to create sculptures, and leaves it in the place, leaves it in the crime scene. But there is more, because the sculptures are very crazy. So when you look at it, they don't understand. They go, what in the world is this? Like the arms all twisted. So I'm not going to review what happens, but basically there is more to that. So that's the idea of the Death Sculptor, is a serial killer who goes after his victims, cuts parts of the bodies, and then use the parts of the body as a puzzle to create an image. So that's this one.
That's the Death Sculpture.
Okay. And the newest one, which was one that came out this year, over here, just came out a few weeks ago, which is in English called One by One. And yes, in Danish it's called, apparently it's called The Killing Show, yeah. which is really funny because that was the original title in English. Nobody knew that, but when we start writing, we come up with a what we call a working title. It's a title that we have in our heads. All my titles get changed. Apparently I'm very bad in creating titles, because every book that I wrote, it was a different title to begin, and then my publishing house changed. And this one, in English, my original title was The Killing Show. And then they told me yesterday that that's the translation here, and I was like, oh, that's fantastic. But yeah, so it was The Killing Show. And that one, I talk about the craziness of the reality TV show. In America, they have too many reality TV shows. They have The X Factor, they have Big Brother. So they have reality TV in a house, in the jungle, in a boat, in the ocean, in the bathroom, everywhere. And it's going a bit crazy. And I always thought, maybe one day they're going to do a television show about serial killers. And that's the idea of the One by One. Is a serial killer who actually broadcasts over the internet all the murders that he does live. This is not playback, so he broadcasts live, and every viewer has a button that they can vote. So he works in that with that idea, with the idea that people, as normal people, would actually watch a show of somebody being murdered live over the internet. And I guarantee it doesn't exist, and hopefully you never will. But I guarantee if somebody comes up with a show, there will be people watching. There will be a lot of people watching. Especially in America, in Russia as well.
Yeah, well, you're quite graphic yourself in your descriptions. Is that something that you think about, or you try to sort of ease up on, or now you're
I actually ease up. Yes,
you ease up.
I do ease up.
So who reads it? Your girlfriend said you have to cut this?
No, I use up I just do it myself. What happens is, I didn't know it was very graphic. Apparently, after my books came out, everybody started saying, compared to all the other authors, my crime scenes are extremely graphic. And I thought everybody was just as graphic as myself. I didn't know that. I didn't read very much before I started writing. But what you have to remember as well is that I used to read police reports from the FBI when I was working as a criminal psychologist. So those police reports are very, very detailed. You know, they have to mention everything that they see on the crime scene. So that's what I was used to reading. So compared to that, my books is a complete cut down. My books are very, very tame. But compared to other books, are not. So I ease down from what I'm used to, because what I used to was reading extremely detailed descriptions. So I try to give an idea of what the crime scene can be, or of what the murder was, or how gruesome, you know, a murder can be. But actually on the new one, there was one of the murders that my editor said, okay, we're gonna have to cut this down. Because she said, it's a little bit too gruesome. So I was like, oh, okay. So, which was the third murder in the book. She said, let's take a little bit of this out, so I did. But yeah, I try to give enough description so that people understand what's going on. And obviously, it's a crime book, so you want that effect. If you get a reader, you have to remember, we're still writers, we're still doing the job, and it's good, for me, it's good if a reader is reading a book and they get to a scene and go, oh my god. To me, it's good. It means that the scene worked. It means that what they are reading was strong enough to make them scared or to make them go, wow. Because if you read a book and you don't get that effect, you just go, okay, it's not fantastic. But if you read a book and you go, okay, I gotta put this down for 10 minutes, I can't carry on reading. And I have a lot of people that say they don't read my books before going to bed. They read my books in the afternoon or in the morning, but they don't read it at night because it can give them nightmare. And I had things like that. I had a father that sent me an email, and his daughter, who was 13 years old, read book number 2, which in English is called The Executioner, and in Danish is called Bolden or Board, something like that. B-O with a K. And he was very upset. He said, my daughter got your book from the library and she can't sleep for 3 days, and she stopped reading it. And he said, don't you think that's bad about the librarian, because the librarian didn't say you shouldn't read it? And I told her, I said, look, I understand your concern, but you got to remember that a librarian that works in the library, she doesn't know every book in the library. Nobody does. It's impossible to. And I am not, back then, I'm still not, but back then I wasn't very well known. I was like, she probably never even heard of Chris Carter. She doesn't know if the book is bad or not. So that's why she didn't say to your daughter, you shouldn't read this. But, so yeah, so I like that effect. If I get a reader who reads and goes, wow, that book, you know, that scene gave me chills or something, to me that's good. So I try to keep it in the balance. I try not to make it too bad, but I also try not to make it too, like Agatha Christie.
Okay, yeah. Your main character, Robert Hunter, who catches these two, how much is he you?
Well, there are little things. I think every author that has a series, we always use a little bit of ourselves on the character, and it's the reason for that is simply because it's easy for us to talk about what we know. So, for example, in my detective, he has insomnia. He doesn't sleep very well. That comes from me. I don't sleep very well. I have insomnia. Yesterday I slept 4 hours, I think. So I was like, it's easy for me to talk about insomnia because I understand insomnia. I have insomnia for many years now. So it's easy for me to talk about it. So I say, okay, he's going to have insomnia. He listens to rock music. I listen to rock music. What can I do? What else? He's an ex-criminal psychologist. I'm an ex-criminal psychologist. Oh yeah, he lives by himself. I live by myself. So there are little things of me in him. But I also have a second detective, which is a partner, and there are a few things of me on the other person. Because the other person, which is called Carlos Garcia, he's got long hair, I got long hair. He was born in Brazil, I was born in Brazil. So I divided a little bit, simply because it's easy for me to talk. If I need to talk about Brazil, it's easy. I live there. I was born there, so it's easy for me to explain things about it. So there are little things from Hunter that come from me, but not a lot. But a lot of people do mix. They do think I am Robert Hunter, which I'm not. I wish I would, but I'm not.
But the obvious question, just to round off, is of course, will we meet him again? Because you cannot, it's obvious, you cannot be trusted to keep doing one thing. Now you're playing rock, now you're writing. Will you keep writing?
Well, yes. Now I'm too old to change jobs. I'm kidding. Yes, I mean, it is funny, as I said, I never thought about writing, but I love it. Now I just love it. I think people say that about golf. I never played golf. But people say that you never play golf, and then when you do it, you go, wow, I love this. This is fantastic. Writing for me was the same thing. I never thought I would write. I never, even in school, I didn't like writing in school. And it is very, very funny that, I mean, even whatever age you are, even very late in your life, you can find something, you go, wow, I love doing this. And I never even thought I would ever do it. And I love writing, I really do. I love the whole process. I love thinking of the story, I love coming up with a plot, I love writing, I love the research you do, because you got to do a lot of research, especially in crime fiction. I love everything about it. So as long as people want to read and carry on buying the books, I'm going to carry on writing, I hope so. So that there's no other career plan, no, that's it.
Very good. Chris Carter, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you.
Det är som samarbete.